morning. So this is Linh Nguyen. I am the CEO and co-founder of IT-Conductor. Today we're going to go through the kind of cloud transformation projects that a lot of customers are going through, whether it's upgrade, refreshes, even on-prem, they have to keep up with the changes. SAPs are basically pushing out new versions and technology refreshes. But particularly the subject of RISE, or what SAP now call the cloud ERP, that is the kind of future for folks that are going to transform and use the commercial licensing that SAP is leveraging for SAP Cloud ERP on private edition. And then we're going to go through some of the differences in terms of these type of projects, some of the roadblocks that you may face, and by experience, I can share some of the difficulties that I encountered both during the planning, the assessment, the actual cloud deployment projects, the actual migration, and then operating the environment. So let's get started. I will show the kind of overview today in terms of the session's objective. So what we know as cloud has been around for more than 12 years, 12, 15 years. IT-Conductor has been around for 10 years. I've been in the SAP business for 30 years, having led a lot of migration, built a lot of advisory services around migrations for large managed service provider and system integrators. So we'll show you what it is and what it is not in terms of particularly the SAP offering. And then we'll talk about some of the challenges operating this environment in a collaborative manner. We're not here to say go RISE, don't go RISE, but if you are going to take this journey, be aware of some of the things that you might run into that can be a severe roadblock. And then particularly for our MSP type folks who work for large system integrators, the large managed service providers, what are customers typically getting challenged with? And what are they looking for in terms of service from you as the provider of services? Now, you could be a large customer and internally you are managing your own SAP environment. But in that scenario, IT itself is the managed service provider, right? You have to provide level services and the service level agreements to your end users or the service level objectives. So we can take a look at those, how to address the best quality in terms of delivering these services. We'll look at also the migration framework. At IT-Conductor, I've seen many projects go from inception blueprint to migrations, but when they go live, they have a lot of issues, and that's because all of the work that they've done are not data-driven. So we want to look at how data can drive decisions making, but also near real-time adaptation to the current situations, right? So like, for instance, sizing, cost management, or high availability. How do you deal with all of this, as well as automation, making sure that you have the right tools to do the job efficiently, because more and more are driving this efficiency type metric from a management standpoint. That's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of the organization are looking at RISE, because SAP is trying to say, hey, if you consolidate licensing with managed services for infrastructure under one view, you will get the optimization. But then that's not going to necessarily transform to the operational side of things. So we'll look at also what MSPs are doing today in terms of how they are addressing some of these migration, starting with assessment challenges through to the actual delivery of a migrated environment for the customer. And I'll share some of the migration strategies. We're also going to be talking about onboarding program at the end. We do have purpose-built SAP type scenarios for managing this environment. So we'll talk about the program that we're going to offer for some of you that might be interested in order to compete in this space, right? So let's go into what RISE adoption. This is actually from Gartner, right? So I've been writing a lot of this on LinkedIn because our own customer, my own customers, my advisory services, we are seeing that the adoption initially was curiosity, then they sign up, and then there was the delay because there had to be sizing, assessment, cost negotiations, who's going to be the service provider, because SAP themselves don't do the migrations, right? They're going to wait for you to deliver systems to them to manage. So here's one of the things we want to look at, right? The adoption itself has been dropping, and that's mainly according to Gartner, is the experience themselves doesn't match the expectation. So if you're used to a managed service provider for years now, managing your environment, having operation team deal with day-to-day management as well as also lifecycle management, and you go into a RISE model, there's a lot of gaps, a lot of kind of either misunderstanding or not understanding the full services or the catalog of things that you're responsible for versus what SAP is going to provide. These are some of the gaps that causes this type of so-called dissatisfaction. So recently at Sapphire, we actually published a recent recap of Sapphire 2025, and SAP is now Cloud ERP, and Cloud ERP is actually a SaaS hosting. The Cloud ERP Private Edition, for those who are now saying the word RISE and RISE. So as soon as we get used to the word SAP RISE, now it's Cloud ERP Private Edition, right? So what it's not is that it's not really cloud, right? Yes, you are running on hyperscaler, whether you pick one of the hyperscalers to run it on. There is no dynamic provisioning. You're typically used to, if you're now putting applications or running your own environment on any of the hyperscalers, you have access to resource provisioning, scaling. There's none of that. Elasticity is not there. You better size it correctly, right? And maybe you should oversize it if you're not sure of how much demand you're going to have, because it's not like today I detect my system's running at some threshold and I want to upsize it. I want to bring it down, bring it up new size, or I want to dynamically bring on board new instances or provision new systems to come into the workload balancing scenario. That's not the case. You're going to have to pay. You're going to have to request provisioning. You're going to have to wait for it. And you're going to keep the old instance as well. So there's a lot of these type of costs that you have to plan for in advance. If I'm going to go through multi-phase deployment, what do I need from day one? Maybe I need from halfway through the project. What do I need before go live? So this is one of the scenarios what's causing a lot of kind of heartburn with the customers who have signed on RISE, is that the behavior is like all-time fashion hardware hosting, right? Because they are essentially selling you a size environment. You're going to pay for it. They're going to provision it. And the expectation is that you use it like a regular, standard production environment or a steady state environment, which most environments are not, right? Particularly going through multi-stage migration. Okay? So there's also the service level. We talked about why there's a dissatisfaction. We looked into this, and clearly my own experience shows that some of these type of environment where if you have expected planned availability as well as unplanned availability, well, most customers today who are enterprise, let's just say Fortune 5,000 companies, right? You're running SAP, it's the backbone of your business. We find that most of those internal operational level objectives are at least 99.9%, or at least you're trying to get to some level of high availability. A lot of customers we know have implemented, let's say, high availability clusters, fell over for databases, for message servers, NQ replication. Well, talking about that in general, SAP is committing to a standardized contract. Unless you sign up for more, it's a 99.7%. So that means that they're going to do a lot of maintenance. You have patching, you have things that are committed by SAP, right? So yeah, monthly patching cycles. But in the unplanned outages space, a 99.7% in SAP itself may not sound like a big deal, but because a lot of our customers today don't purely run everything on SAP, they have connectivity to other enterprise environments. This causes a lot of downstream effect, a chain reaction, if you will. And I've seen this with customers where we've had outages where, SAP may be down for only half an hour, but the recovery of downstream systems may cost an extra 6 or 8 hours, right? Rerunning a batch job, rerunning of, banking interfaces, all these other things are costing the business a lot more than what seems to be on paper with the SAP outages. So this is something they're not going to manage your ecosystem. They're going to manage the SAP environment only. So comparing to what I'm advising in parallel, customers who are on RISE, as well as customers who are being co-managed by their managed service provider on hyperscaler, the difference is very clear. You know, you have a total service management where somebody like a managed service provider, SI, is managing, including the non-SAP applications, right? You might have interfaces, you might have text, you might have other things that are doing BI outside, you might be doing maybe Workday payroll, etc. Those are not going to be managed by SAP, but you have to manage as a complex interrelated system. So this is something that has to be kind of analyzed clearly from day one. What is the impact of moving something systems being managed by a separate SLA that are not connected to the rest of my environment? This will be considered your responsibility, meaning the customer. So for the managed service partner, you're going to play a key role if you're going to deliver service, even working with RISE. How are you going to manage this overall? So it has to be end to end in terms of the vision, right? Not just the SAP ecosystem. So assuming you get through to the assessment, and this is one of the things that we're going to talk about through our onboarding program for the tools and solutions to help you accelerate your assessment process. First of all, in a RISE migration, it's not like any traditional thing. And I said I've been doing migrations for like over 30 years. Everything starting from R3 day and working with large like migration factories. Never before until now working with RISE that I have these kind of challenges getting data from source environment to target environment. What we typically design is a very optimal way of moving data, minimizing downtime. When you go to RISE, you've got a, they call it the hosting kind of environment, right? The production environment is sitting in a secure environment. You're migrating customer environment from on-prem or from another hyperscaler. Even if you're on the same hyperscaler, let's say you already implemented SAP, you're running on, I don't know, Azure or AWS, and you've chosen RISE and you're going to, again, the same hyperscaler, but you can't retain that. You're going to have to move all of that asset into a hosted RISE environment. They're going to re-provision everything according to their supported stack, and you're going to move data into that. So that movement is not meaning traditional in any sense. So you don't have access to database, you have to VM. Therefore, they're going to say, hey, you need a migration server, you need a jump server, you need all kinds of these things that are not in the hosted environment what the steady state is, right? So we've had cases where the migration server, let's say you've mapped it out and the migration server is going to be needing, I don't know, something like 32 core. You're going to need like 2 terabytes of space. You're going to need this for a year because the project is at least 6 months to a year. That could run in excess of $100,000 for this migration server alone. So this is something that has to be factored into how are you going to do the migration? What are the interim systems you're going to need? And that's going to have to be added to the cost. So some of the SIs and MSPs I see right now doing proposals, they're saying, hey, we're going to do your migrations for free. Be very careful what free includes, because suddenly now you find yourself in a project, the service, but then you have to request SAP to provision this VM, because this VM has to sit inside of some environment that SAP is going to let move data into their secure hosting zone. So this is something that is has to be planned in advance, and it's a gotcha for a lot of customers. We see the extra cost that's creeping in. Even say I need a 1 terabyte, but I do need to do multiple mock run. I may end up needing 2 terabytes because I want to keep some of that for reference, some of the data I have from even logs and migration things that have dump space or whatever. You're going to need that, and you add for additional requests for storage. It's going to cost more money, right? So that's an item you got to plan for. Also working with a lot of the tools that our SAP community knows well, right? So you're going to use something like SUM, right? Software Update Manager. If you're going to do an S4 conversion brownfield, you're going to do a support pack update, or maybe you're moving ECC and you're just going to update enhancement pack, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these tools talk to the database, right? But imagine now your system is on-prem and your target's on the day. This tool now has to work with this environment where you don't have visibility into the end part, right? Although some can give you some visibility like CPU utilization at some point in the HANA database, right? But when you're doing migration, you need complete control. So typically in the past, when we design migration best practices, we have end-to-end control. So we have source, we have interim system, we have target system, we have complete control so that if I want to optimize a migration, I need to scale my number of parallel threads for, R3 load or whatever. Now you don't have this visibility. You just say, oh, here's my endpoint, but I don't have a tool. I can't even put, say, HANA Studio and connect to it. I can't connect my monitor to see how heavily loaded this system is, so I can upscale my number of processes. So there's a lot of things, and then sometimes, of course, tool. You're aware of SAP conversion tool. There's thousands and thousands of phases, and we'll show you a little bit later how we approach this. But any of these phases can break for no reason, right? So, you're missing a file, or, you have an open transport, or, there's a missing component on the target. Any of these things needs to be kind of managed. And typically in the past, it's just given to basis. You guys do the migration, but then at the time, basis also have access to look at what's going on and fix it right away. Something stopped. I got 5 minutes to fix it. But now you got to plan for this 5 minutes, open a ticket, wait. And if you don't have max attention, you don't have, some of these things that SAP say, well, it's non-production, and you're going to have to wait for, let's say an 8 to 8 p.m. type service where they're going to answer your ticket, right? So that's another challenge there. We find also in a migration, if you don't know your components ahead of time, so for instance, if you are using some tax packages, or using some kind of security third-party add-on, in your source environment, it's important to get all these components. If you don't have these components mapped out, what's going to happen? You're going to upgrade and you're going to find yourself in the middle of it that you're missing components. You got to stop. Or some components are not available for upgrade. You're going to need a special key from SAP to do special things to bypass certain phase. All of this has to be coordinated, and we find a lot of the RISE projects today, you end up having two SAP accounts. You've always had one account. Let's say you've had an account for the life of your SAP environment. Now you create a new account on RISE because you're moving to HANA and you're on-prem, maybe you're on Oracle. This is also a problem because now you suddenly have accounts on two sides, and sometimes your licensing doesn't reflect what you have on a target. And so we've seen this issue as well. Look out for, from an account perspective, work with the SAP team, make sure you understand how the accounts work. Even something as simple as migration, you are going to need the migration key. It has to be the right key. Even the license for SAP system has to come from the right account, reflecting what you are licensed. If not, then the tool is going to stop moving, right? So let's move along. Some of our customers also are asking this question. We did a webinar last month relating to Cloud AOM. So when you're moving to RISE, you got to think about your tool set, right? So now you don't have access to OS, and you have to decide whether you're going to move Solution Manager or not. So I'll leave that topic to some of the content we have online about this. But this is another area you need to say, what is my strategy around Solution Manager? What is my strategy for end-to-end observability and application performance management, right? So you don't want to get caught, move to environment where you start wanting to do maybe performance tests, but have no tool. You're not going to be able to say, have I tuned this? Do I have kind of a comparison between my on-prem and my target environment? So you need to look through this solution as well, not just doing the migration, putting data there and say, oh, yeah, it's up. You have to look at the end-to-end use case for things like change management. You have to look at performance management and some of the other things. If you are using test data management like TDMS, you also have to look at that, whether it's compatible with the environment. So you might end up having to migrate your solution manager or re-implement because Cloud AOM isn't ready for a lot of these scenarios. Okay, so moving forward, what we're looking at here is a typical scenario where I went through, and I've been through this several times actually on different customers, but recently, we start doing the migration and everything looks good. And then you hit a point where, the some tool says, hey, I'm going to need to, either recreate or drop the tenant on the target that SAP RISE has provisioned. Remember, when you pay, they provision a system. Doesn't matter if you don't use it for 6 months. It's up and running with a standard vanilla SAP install, all right? Which is not that useful. Nobody uses it. But the migration comes along, and now you're going to say, I'm going to have to do something about this tenant. Well, what happened was that it actually dropped the tenant to recreate it. And in that process, if you understand new SAP S4 environment, there's this component for machine learning and all these other stuff. It just dropped that as well. Something like that would just stop the migration altogether because there's no component. Happens to be like a Friday night, didn't get response to like Monday after opening a ticket, try to escalate it. What you end up doing is that you lost 2 days now, where they have to go in and reinstall the component for you. So there's a lot of things that could have been fixed in 5 minutes that don't. So how do you work around this, right? So we talked about some of our MSP program. We even have now our own solution to monitor the sum process. So in case sum you use, there's a notifying that notify you when something stopped. It's not very useful because during a migration, you've got the development team, you've got business analyst team, you've got several folks in your team. You're not going to work around the clock 8 hours and 24-hour shift, right? You might have 3 shifts. And so the sum tool itself needs to be kind of carefully monitored and managed. So some of the things we looked at is how do we make sure that when something breaks, somebody's notified and maybe even open a ticket directly and get that kind of level orchestration into what we call the PMO. So upgrade itself now is not just a basis thing, doing a technical thing, because it used to be. You can do things and fix everything yourself, but now you have to involve from a ticket level, the project management level. They have to escalate to the counterpart, so SAP or client, account manager, etc. So you need to be able to coordinate that. And we've seen projects go even running on Jira or some project management just completely stop because it has no visibility into what the tool is doing to move it along. So we'll talk about some of the. I'll show you some examples. So I'll say today where customers go and they want to look at moving to RISE. Let's just say there's a team, they've been trained to do cloud operations. They got basis team, DBAs, network folks, and you've trained them for years now. You have good cloud admin. Well, go to RISE, they're not going to be able to touch anything, right? First of all, you're not going to do managing VMs. You're not going to manage your storage. You're not going to do even HANA install. What happened to all those teams that you have built over the years, right? So your engineers are not going to be able to hop onto HANA and add a component or add a delivery unit. So some of these are real frustrations. So one of the things you have to have visibility, right? So you have to be able to see what's coming ahead. So don't wait for last minute and say, oh, I got to open this ticket because I can't do this myself anymore. And I open the ticket and I have to wait, right? Because you don't have a dedicated person unless you pay for max attention or some kind of high level service from SAP. That ticket's going to get into some queue and somebody's going to process it. It may be a day later, maybe 2 days later, right? So just because you have skill resource now, they are sitting idle, they can't touch it. And so some of these has to now be ticket creator describing what you need to do and make sure that when I need. So effectively, the joke was a couple of years ago when I did the RISE type podcast, we talked about like essentially you're running a project having a large work breakdown structure, and the tasks are now assigned to tickets. They're not assigned to people. So there's a lot of that causes unsatisfaction. A lot of people I know have left their own company and joined some other company because you're going to RISE, right? What am I going to do with my cloud skills? I'm losing skills. One of the things there also is that now you are dependent more on tools because you don't have access to it. You need to be able to have data-driven centralized tool to manage, control, and orchestrate all of this. So the more dependent they are on SAP doing their things, the actual knowledge drain happens, the dissatisfaction occurs. So there's a lot of things like that we need to address because how can you keep these folks entertained or maybe interested in continuing their career? Maybe the way there is to become kind of automation engineers, become more kind of advanced level folks, because now the database OS is gone, right? Infrastructure is gone. I'm not even sure it's worth, if you don't work for SAP themselves, to even get something like, say, HANA, administration certification. Because what are you going to do? You can't touch it, right? That's part of the frustration there also that I see there. So let's go through and take a look at what do we do around MSP. So how do we help customers? So this is when I say MSPs, but it could be customers, right? Large customers planning an upgrade, migration. But we look at our data-driven approach by saying you have to start discovering what you got, use data-driven approach, go from, instead of like months on and doing migration assessment, going to hours or maybe a couple of weeks to deliver a proposal to understand. Because why? If you have data, you don't need 100% to sit there, go on site, sit there and go through spreadsheets. So the discovery process, we go through that in terms of being able to gather the information about a landscape, doing the deep dive, what we call the distill process, is how we go deep dive into each system. So let's say you have ECC, BW, CRM, whatever. I want to look at the full stack, the application, how it's utilized, what the components are, look at the database utilization, look at peak periods, look at, kind of baseline performance. All of that can be done in that remote stage. So IT-Conductor actually was purpose-built to do this kind of thing where we go in and we say, all right, start collecting, and then maybe 2 days later, give me all of the performance baseline, give me access to all of the systems, what I configure with CPU, memories, disk, look at the component level and all of that. So dependencies can be built that way. And then from there, you kind of go into what you design. How am I gonna look at my migration? It's not all systems are equal, right? So we're gonna look at the things like mapping the migration out. What system needs to be upgraded first before they can even be migrated? Not everything will be supported by SAP RISE. They have a minimum stack. If you are familiar with the kind of the PAM, right, platform availability matrix as well, they go through that as well, right? So now that you have an environment, what are you going to do? How am I going to migrate? So you have to generate this kind of roadmap and build out the migration strategy. And a lot of that has to come from data, right? Not all systems are equal. So you have a 10 terabyte system that is, 99.95% SLA. You're going to treat that differently than maybe a less important system that, only has 99.7% and it's like less than a terabyte. So there's multiple things to develop there in order to generate a proposal that's meaningful to the project. So with this, let's say we imagine connecting to a customer environment, having the access to generate the inventory of systems, having the ability to see inside of these systems, having real data update very frequently so that, let's say, your project to propose, but by the time the customer decides is 3 to 6 months out, that data retains on the system, meaning that we are connecting, we're collecting data near real time. If your engineers are working on this and say, hey, I forgot to look at components, I forgot to look at how many CPU is on that HANA database, or I forgot to look at how it's configured. All of that information is live and ready, available for your global team to work on. So it could be a three teams across different regions working on one customer proposal. They have access to data. This thing keeps moving around the clock to get delivered to the customer in time. So this is creating a competition, right? Because you are able to deliver real-time insights into the environment to provide analytics as well as make recommendation based on actual data, and not just say, I'm going to go through your 20 early watch reports and then come out with a recommendation. So let's look at what we do in this space. So this is not going to be a sales pitch, but the difference is that IT-Conductor was purpose-built for SAP, managing from infrastructure all the way to applications. And now with the orchestration as kind of the glue that glues together all of these things, I can actually give you an insight into what it looks like from many tools that we are using today with our customers to help teams manage as well as migrate and then basically optimize the environment. So from a tooling standpoint, it's platform as a service where you have service orchestration, you have intelligent automation, and then we bring in the observability so that you can have that real-time insights into the source environment. If the customer say, hey, why are you charging me more to migrate this system? well, you can show them on a dashboard. This system looks like this. It's complex. It's big. It's all these things. So that's real time is actually build a lot of credibility. And even if the customer doesn't choose to migrate with you or be with you, if you show them the data and the insights, you're going to stay engaged in their project. And perhaps they will be a service partner in terms of being, hey, you can provide me some automation around these pain points that I have, right? So imagine the migration command center, and I'll show you this in the live dashboard here soon too. We have centralized kind of ability to coordinate across multiple things from source to target. We also have ability to kind of look at the security posture. You're not going to move systems and leave them vulnerable. So you want to do kind of what we call pay your technical debt. If you've got like 200 security nodes not implemented in your system, you want to take care of that. If you have bottlenecks, you have issues related to I/O performance, whatever, you can take care of that. And then from a migration, you want to see source, target, and what happens in between all of the intricate processes from deploying. Most customers think about the tool like a basis guy would use, like some we talked about, but there's like hundreds of steps to do before you get to that point, right? So that's kind of a how do you all coordinate all that? This is a teaser. I'm going to leave this to last, but we do have a survey that's going to ask you if you are interested in, enabling you to do some of this yourself, automate some of this journey, and be part of the team that does the delivery of both migration, the assessment, and the operation work afterwards, if you're getting the managed services portion. We have a lot of areas that can help you with the acceleration tools. So I'll talk about some of this. We do have a link to send out that folks can fill in as well. In fact, I think we can put up the thing right now as well for the link. So this time I'm just going to I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the demo. This is designed to kind of give you insights to what we can do to help if you're in this journey, whether you are assessing or you're migrating or you're operating already, or maybe you have a mix of customers doing either of these. We have ability to kind of, inject the solution into this to give you like the real insights and management capability, right? So I'm showing you so another sister organization that I run is actually a managed service provider. We used to do certified SAP hosting. We don't do that anymore. SAP is taken over with RISE. So we're focused on delivering managed services in the tooling aspects, managing and helping you build a practice, right? So something like this where we have a dashboard, we have also operational, systems that we manage near real time, right? We have monitor management, orchestration involved. It's an example of you would get an overview where you have issues that are automatically corrected. We call them recovery actions, different types of applications we're managing, right? We're going to show you also we have our dashboards that can do everything from automating your, let's say today you have 20 systems, part of the customer environment. You want to automate things like the stop-start automation. That is part of like a lot of managed service provider coordination for maintenance weekend. Who's going to be, available? We're going to take down 3 systems. We're going to apply patches and restart them. A lot of this stuff now is automated. We can have single click or schedule SAP system to be stopped gracefully. Whether on one database or another, whether you just want to do the application and not the database, or whether you want to do the full stack, including the operating system reboot. Patching, we have ability to do that. So we have a ability to kind of do what we call our service catalog. So we go to service catalog. IT-Conductor is built to provide you a kind of like an a la carte menu that you can offer to customers, right? Whether you're internally your own customer or multiple customers. You can have a service catalog where you're taking them from just doing things manually, sending email requests, or maybe creating a service now to actually scheduling an activity, everything from application patching to database cloning, system refresh, all of this, including end-to-end migration. So we have migration technology today that can take care of DevOps in terms of infrastructure as code, provisioning, creating systems, installing SAP, moving data, all of that. So example of service catalog, again, I'm going through this quickly, but I'm going to stop at some point and let you, kind of ask some questions. But we have full health dashboard into your environment. So each environment, we know what's being monitored, what's managed, what's operational, what are some of the issues that are outstanding. what are some of the top recovery actions in your system, and also, what systems and maintenance. So this example, we have lots of dashboards. We actually have a wiki that talks about different things, insights, visibility. How does this help in the migration? Imagine today you go into customer and they say, I would like a proposal to do a migration. Well, if you walked in and you say, okay, let me connect our data collector, and within the couple of hours, we're able to discover your landscape. What does your landscape look like? What type of environment are you on premise, or you're on a hyperscaler already? We get this kind of discovery, and I can show you interestingly, an SAP landscape, this is an example of landscape discovery. This literally happens within a couple of hours. Right? You have ability to tap into SAP customer landscape to get the detailed report. Right? This can spit out, let's say, an XML file, an Excel file of every single VM, every CPU, memory configuration, application, whether it's ABAP, Java, etc. So we get into this detail, and how does that help you? So let's say, for instance, you connect and you find out they have S4, they have, distributed, they have central services, they have 5 app servers, whatever, you have HANA. You can get in there and get this information in a couple hours. So what are they running on? Are they running on VMware? They've got this. So this can be produced for sizing activity very quickly. And we support, once you connect to this is level 1 discovery. The next thing we can do is we can go into distill, which we get into more detail about each of these systems. So let's say if I go into each system, what do I have available to me? So for instance, if you are looking at ECC environment, you can get a deep dive, get a complete, this is out of the box dashboard about that system. Once we discover, we fully look into how it's currently used. So you can get sizing, you can get information very easily produced, like what kind of noise am I getting from the system, alerts, all the things that are happening. Let's say it's 1,000 users in this system every day. You can get all of the baseline information about this system. You can dive in, get the, let's say they're running already on HANA, right? You can get into the system and say, I want to look at the HANA overview to give me an idea of what this system looks like in terms of memory overview, etc. So we have built in out of the box intelligence about the system. So, I already know what my HANA environment looks like, right? I'm using this much memory, have this much storage. I even know how big the system is. So you can get these insights within hours. And from here on, you can build a very compelling data-driven migration plan. If only HANA, I just, gonna propose a system replication, right? If they're on HANA, they're on Oracle or MaxDB or whatever, you have equivalent of that. You can get that type of information very quickly. So from our deploying to getting data is very quick. So that gives you, your engineer, your architect, to work on proposals using real-time data. If you're, let's say, working with an on-prem environment, that's, say, on VMware, we have full VMware discovery. So you can go in there, if you're running vSphere, we can connect to it. We can get the entire data center that's being run on VMware, go down to the physical host, go down to the virtual host level, or the guest information. You get all the virtual machine information on there. How much storage, what are they using, what are all of the VMs, what are their sizes, all of that information can be done literally in hours, okay? Now going to things like security, as I mentioned before, we've already designed a way for you to gather each system. What are some of the pending security nodes for that environment? So imagine doing this, you didn't have anybody on site, you can pull this data, you can say, hey, you know what? You have a bunch of outstanding SAP high CVE that are reported for this system, right? And you can look into that. We can even do the report for you, saying, hey, you know what, for this project we propose, we do a bunch of security patching. Some of your vulnerabilities are very long, outstanding. You need kernel patching. So you need to build this into a proposal. It's there in our security nodes integration, right? Let's go to the other portion. If you're doing migration, I can tell you 100% of the time, you're going to be pulling down lots of content from SAP. You're downloading software install, you're downloading patches. We built ourselves a SAP download manager. So you might have a team of 3 or 5 or 10. These people are downloading the same files over and over again from SAP. We built a way for you to design that you can actually have a team-based download manager. Multiple people are downloading, right? They could download different things, and we will actually deduplicate and say, don't pull down the same thing twice. We monitor the storage of your central downloads. Everything gets into, let's say, a file system. That file system is available on all your systems when you're doing deployment, installation, etc. And so from this perspective, you can have things like individuals sign up with your SIDs. You can have items in your basket. We will download for you instead of downloading to your laptop, uploading to a server. So download managers will help these type of projects. If you're doing a migration, we designed a migration dashboard. So we have migration dashboard that will talk about that will source environment, target environment, all the orchestration in between. You can see here we leverage infrastructure as code like Terraform, Ansible to do the actual SAP installation, to even do the migration, interact with SPWM, the software provisioning manager. We track that. We have full visibility to clouds like AWS or Azure. If you're not going to Rise, you can manage this yourself. Have fingertip, you can bring down systems. Now, I talked about how do you integrate? So we ourselves as an orchestration platform can build a migration project. Everybody knows there's preparation phases. There's lots of things for simplification item if you go into S4 project. These can be coordinated as tasks in IT-Conductor, right? So you can assign people, we can run, and some of these tasks could be automated by interacting with an activity with the end system. So not just managing like a typical project plan with a task, but actually doing the automation behind that. And then something that we're pretty proud of recently also is, as I said, if you're doing SAP upgrade, you're going to know you only have one person with one privileged access. How does the project, the PMO interact with that project? We've done a recent one upgrade ourselves in our lab for our S4 system. We plug in IT-Conductor. We're able to actually go down to the level of interacting with the migration tool to know what steps it's up to, what the logs are. So we can actually get in very deep into the upgrade itself and find out all the phases that you are going through. And if there's any bottlenecks or any issues, you stop at an error. All of this actually go down to even, for instance, the log itself. So if you want to say, hey, I'm interested in this particular phase, maybe I'm a developer, I want to look at dictionary reconciliation, I can go down and get to a level where, hey, I can get the logs itself. So we interact with some. This is extremely useful. Think about this. Instead of just one person now have access to this, even with the SUM GUI, we're interacting with that and providing that for PMO level or coordination. So now not asking, when am I going to reach this? What's going on? What phase am I in? This is interactively now included in IT-Conductor as part of the kind of suite of things. So I'll stop here for now. I think I've kind of used the time up. I want to kind of show the, I believe the partner survey. We have designed this. We can send it out. If what I've said is interesting, reflects some of the things or challenges you're doing, we are designing our first cohort in terms of signing up interested parties that we're going to look at from a tooling standpoint. How can we help you accelerate your projects? You can sign up for this, and then we'll analyze and see if there's a fit for what you're looking for, what kind of business in terms of customers you have, the projects you have, and from that perspective, help you onboard you as an MSP partner or a customer for that matter if you're going through these projects, and look at how we can help you, whether it's assessment, whether it's automating some parts of the migration, whether it's to help you manage the operations afterwards, whether it's something like security, change management, or whether it's things like even refreshes, whatever we can do to help you be more efficient, because you got to be taking the next step to working with collaborative approach with other parties like SAP and the managed service provider, and then maybe third-party vendors and consultants. So we'll share this one, and hopefully if you're interested, you can take a look at that. But for now, what I want to do is open up for any questions that we may have from folks, and hopefully this has been useful. We'll have these follow-up sessions as well, depending on your interest. So if you have any questions, I would open up, and maybe you can type into Q&A if you have anything. I know I've covered a lot of things and kind of teased through a bunch of things. So we want to see something deeper in detail. feel free to kind of reach out. We'll be able to schedule more detailed sessions with you on one-on-one if needed. Otherwise, we'll do more of these sessions. And I post almost daily, regularly online, and I want to be able to answer your questions online as well if you interact through LinkedIn, right? All right. If not, what we do is we'll wrap it up, and we will actually send out the recording at some time in the future here soon, and also an email follow-up with the MSP form interest. If you're interested, feel free. It only takes a couple minutes to fill out, and then hopefully we can have a follow-up interaction if what we said and what we presented is of interest to you. Again, it's a spirit of collaboration, a spirit of partnerships. We want to help everybody succeed, whether you're going to rise or not, in terms of being able to manage your landscape and your life cycle in the near future, and as well as the multiple parts that you have to also be aware of, right? Technology refreshes and keeping up with efficiency and tools. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance today, and take care. All right, thank you.